Hello everyone, and welcome to Dark Threads channel. Today we have an intriguing story from Reddit. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe, like the video if you enjoy it, and leave a comment. These simple actions mean a lot for the future of this channel. Now let's dive into the story. I remember the day everything started to unravel. It was an autumn afternoon, the air crisp with a hint of decay, mirroring the state of my marriage. Back then, I believed in second chances, or maybe I just feared being alone. The quiet evenings were filled with routine, and the silences between us grew heavier, burdened by things left unsaid. I kept convincing myself that love could outlast betrayal if I just held on tighter. But no effort could erase the memory of seeing her at that conference, laughing too easily, touching his arm like I no longer existed. That was the moment I started building walls around my heart, one brick at a time, pretending not to know, not to care, while the truth gnawed at me like a slow poison. Life has a way of disrupting even the best-laid plans, and after my divorce, I stopped planning altogether. I used to prepare for everything. At work, I meticulously arranged strategies and backup plans for emergencies. But this morning I received a call that threw me off balance. I had to visit my ex-wife, someone I hadn't seen in over a year. I wasn't eager, but when my daughter Samantha, our beloved Sammy, asked, I knew I had to. Reluctantly, I climbed into my prized green Mustang, unsure of what awaited me. I began the drive back to town in my Shelby GT 500, weaving through heavy highway traffic for nearly an hour before finally reaching the hospital where Sammy had taken her mother. Parking in the visitor lot, I hoped my stay would be brief. When I called the support line, I learned my ex-wife Erica had been in the hospital for 2 days. An impatient nurse greeted me, offering a polite smile as she guided me to the room, letting me know I could wait while Erica slept. "Your wife?" she started to ask. I quickly corrected her. "Ex-wife. Very much ex-wife," I smirked. The nurse returned my smile, but before I could say more, my daughter cut in. "Dad, are you really flirting with the nurse while Mom's in the hospital?" "Of course not," I assured her. "If I were flirting, she'd know." Glancing at the nurse, I asked her name. "Bonnie," she replied. "That fits," I said. "Doesn't it mean pretty or beautiful in Scottish or Irish?" I added, putting on a playful Scottish accent that made Bonnie's smile widen. "Are you talking about me?" she asked. "Yes, I am," I replied. Just as we were sharing a moment, Sammy decided to put an end to it and ushered me into her mother's room. The ward was cramped and dismal, packed with beds. "It's awful in here, isn't it?" Sammy asked. Shrugged. "How would I know? I don't have anything to compare it to." She sighed. "Dad, this is the ward. They cram as many beds in here as they can. It's noisy, sometimes it smells, and Mom deserves better." I shrugged again. "She's only here because she doesn't have health insurance," Sammy continued. "Darren can't put her on his plan, but the only one who could is." Her voice trailed off. I raised my hands. "Ooh, I'm retired. I'm a consultant now. The company offered me a plan, so I took it." Then quietly she said, "You could put Mom on your health plan." I sighed. "Sammy, sweetheart, I love you more than anything. I do almost anything for you. But you need to understand, your mother and I are divorced. I fulfilled everything the judge required when we signed those papers. I even took out a loan to pay her what she was owed." Sammy looked at me, searching for something. "How many divorced people do you know who got every penny they were entitled to on time? People miss alimony and child support payments all the time. I never missed one. I gave your mom what she was owed, but not everything she wanted," I said. We stood in silence, looking at Erica as she slept. Then Sammy spoke softly. "You know she never wanted a divorce, right? She still loves you." I sighed. "Sammy, people in hell want ice water, but they're stuck there because of the choices they made. Your mom and I are divorced because of something she did when we were married." Sammy nodded. "I know what she did. I was there when it all came out, remember? And I know she was wrong. But I can't shake the feeling that you two still belong together. Dad, she loves you so much. Just look at her, she's falling apart. She doesn't even look 50 anymore. 2 years ago she could pass for 30, and now she looks like she's in her 60s. I kept my voice even. Some people just don't age well. Maybe she needs to take better care of herself. Sammy's voice rose with emotion. Dad, she needs her husband back. She needs to feel. She needs to feel loved and cared for. That's why she's so drained, Sammy insisted. I sighed, feigning shock. Is that why you dragged me out of bed? To find her a husband? Sammy's frustration grew. Where's your compassion, Dad? Don't you have any left? Is this what you wanted? To see the woman you vowed to love, respect, and cherish reduced to this, just so you can feel like you won? My voice sharpened. Sammy, you don't understand anything about compassion. Think about what you're saying and who you're talking about. I put up with her behavior for years, gave her countless chances, and stayed married to her longer than I should have. And don't forget, your loyalty to her nearly cost you your own marriage. Sammy closed her eyes, reflecting on my words. At least 3 families were almost destroyed, all teetering because of the selfishness of 2 unfaithful people, I added. Maybe they're meant for each other. Sammy's eyes widened. Dad, you don't mean that. I simply shrugged. She studied me before speaking again. You're getting older too, you know. Don't you want more out of life than just driving that car too fast, traveling, and dating someone new every week? I shrugged again, palms up. I love my car. Mustangs have always been my thing. I enjoy traveling too. And as for the girl of the week, I've actually been seeing Shell for nearly a year now. I do have a soft spot for redheads, and besides, you introduced us. Sammy's eyes filled with tears. But Dad, don't you want someone to share your life with long term? My voice hardened. Been there, done that. I really thought I'd found the one. I loved her enough to swallow my pride and try to fix things even after discovering what she was up to. But she just couldn't let it go. Sammy hesitated before responding. Dad, some women can love 2 men at the same time. I shook my head. And some men can accept that. The problem is, I'm not one of those men. She sighed, looking exhausted. Why am I even here, Dad? I've been here since we brought her in. I needed a break to go home, shower, change. I wanted to see my husband too. Darren was great. He sat with her for a few hours yesterday so I could rest, but I can't ask him to do that again. You know he doesn't really like her. I gave a small nod. Maybe he doesn't dislike her. Maybe he's just afraid that spending too much time with her will change you. And he loves you. Sammy's voice softened. Do you really love me, Daddy? My heart clenched. I always have. Always will, Angel. Her eyes searched mine. Then why can't you be nicer to Mom? For my sake. Why can't you just be kind to her, even a little? My voice dropped, laced with bitterness. Because sometimes I can't find my heart. She tore it out while it was still beating. Sammy's eyes widened at the anger in my voice. I loved her, Sammy. Longer than you've been alive. And during all those years together, I forced myself to stay calm. No, Sammy, I can't be friends with her. I can't move past it. There's no burying the hatchet unless it's buried in her forehead. I don't even know why I'm here now. Sammy's voice trembled. Dad, have you gotten your closure? You've already broken her spirit. What else do you need? Exhaled. Sammy, I didn't seek revenge on your mother. I walked away. I just left. She nodded but still looked lost. I know, Dad. But I still don't get it. So many things haven't made sense these past 2 years since the divorce. So many things I can't figure out. I raised an eyebrow. Like what? She hesitated. We split everything evenly. Except for the house. Just doesn't add up. Mom didn't need all those things, she just wanted you. And it seemed like you should have had more money than you did. Sammy questioned my finances, wondering why I was driving a custom Mustang that her husband estimated cost at least $50,000 when Mom couldn't even afford a car. I shrugged and suggested maybe I had better credit. I assured her I'd stay with Mom while she slept, playing games on my iPad, and would call her if anything happened. Sammy explained that Mom had been diagnosed with severe depression and was on medication, but for some reason she had taken all her pills at once, requiring her stomach to be pumped. She hadn't been eating well, had been drinking too much, and was now exhausted and dehydrated. They still weren't sure if it was an accident or intentional. Smirking, I asked if that meant she probably wouldn't wake up, to which Sammy solemnly confirmed. Before leaving, she asked me to be kind to Mom if she did wake up, and I promised. Sitting next to Mom's bed, I pulled out my iPad, attempting to read but quickly losing focus as my mind drifted back 2 years. We do strange things for our children. When Sammy was little, she loved mixing candies to cook, and no matter how odd her creations were, I always told her they were the best I'd ever had. I recalled the lovely evening when Sammy invited her mother and me over for dinner. Despite her cooking skills still being questionable, the roast was dry as the Sahara. Darren, seemingly aware, kept refilling my drink to help wash it down. The best part of the night was spending time with my mischievous grandson, John, who could do no wrong in his grandpa's eyes. The highlight, however, was when Sammy and Darren announced they were expecting again. I joked with Darren about what he was doing to my daughter to keep this up. We discussed baby names, agreeing on Elizabeth for a girl after Darren's mother, and I suggested Peter for a boy after his father, which Darren liked. Then, everything shifted when Erica interjected, pointing out that I already had one grandchild named after me and questioning why I wouldn't let someone else have that honor. Jokingly, I asked if she wanted to name the baby Erica.
It's a girl, and Eric if it's a boy, right? I asked. Actually, I was thinking about Randall, Erica said. We could call him Randy for short. Randall James Dillon sounds like a strong name. Suddenly, the room felt cold. Sammy turned to look at me. I don't know, I don't like it, she said. I prefer Dad's suggestion. Don't you, Darren? Still smiling at the thought of his father's joy, Darren hadn't noticed my reaction and nodded in agreement. Erica reached for my hand, as she often did, but I pulled away almost too forcefully. Sammy, unaware of my expression, asked, "What do you think, Dad?" In the coldest voice I had ever used with her, I replied, "I think if you use that name, it'll be just as big a mistake as what your mother just did." The atmosphere shifted instantly, like a scene in a movie where music suddenly stops, complete with the imaginary sound of a needle scratching a record. An eerie silence followed for what felt like an eternity, but was really only a few seconds. Darren, trying to be diplomatic, glanced at his watch and said, "Wow, I really need to get to bed. I have an early meeting tomorrow." "Thanks for the evening, Darren," I said. "Love you, Sammy." I stood up and headed for the door. As I opened it, Sammy called after me. "Dad, what's wrong with you? Are you forgetting something?" "Hug me, Sammy," I said. "I need to leave. I can't breathe." She laughed. "I meant Mom. I thought you didn't drink, Darren. What have you been giving my dad all night?" "It was just Pepsi, honey," I said. "Although, I could use something stronger now." "What's going on, John?" Erica asked as she approached, reaching out again. This time, I moved away so clearly that everyone noticed. "We'll talk about it at home, sweetheart," she said. "No, we won't," I said sharply. "I'm going back to my house. I don't know what you'll do or where you'll go, but it won't be with me." "Wait, Dad," Sammy said. "Are you upset with Mom over the name?" Erica's eyes widened as she realized I knew the truth. "No, sweetheart," I said. "I'm not upset or angry. I just woke up to reality. Sometimes the people you love hurt you, and you endure it, staying silent, hoping that if you just wait it out, things will get better. But then something happens that makes you realize it was all for nothing. Some things can't be overlooked." Everyone stared at me, except Erica. She already knew what I meant. "Dad, you're not making sense," Sammy said. I took a deep breath. "Sammy, your mother wants to name my grandson after the man she's loved for the last 15 years, the man she had an affair with. She found out a few days ago that he died, and now she's trying to keep his memory alive through my grandson." Both Sammy and Darren turned to Erica, who had collapsed to the floor, quietly sobbing. "I'm so sorry, John," she whispered. "It's over. It ended more than 5 years ago. I tried to be a better wife to you," Erica said. Why did it end, Erica? I asked. Because I felt guilty, she replied. I knew it was wrong, so I stopped. Can we talk about this? First of all, it wasn't a full-blown affair. We only met once a year, and it wasn't always physical. And whenever I came back home, you and I always had the best times together. It ended a long time ago. I love you, John. We need to discuss this. You don't fully understand. It's not as terrible as it seems. It's worse than you think, Erica, I replied sharply. Maybe after the divorce is finalized, you'll finally be honest. I'm done with your lies. What are you saying? She asked, her voice trembling. I confessed, Erica. If you could, you would still be seeing him, I said. I told you I ended it, she insisted, her voice rising. And yet you're lying again, I said. I'm done. Done with what? She asked. I went to Boston and met him 5 years ago, I revealed. I beat him so badly that he ended up in the hospital. Before you boarded your flight, I took his phone and read all your messages. I might use them as evidence. I also made sure he knew who I was and warned him that if he ever came near you again, it would be his last day on Earth. I even said I'd inform his wife about your relationship. I told him that if he ever reached out to you again, even as a friend, I'd come back. That's why it ended, Erica. She stared at me, stunned. I did end it, John. I'm sorry, she said, tears forming in her eyes. I was wrong, confused, it was a mistake. I'm sorry too, Erica, I said. I was wrong as well. I was confused. I made a mistake by trying to save this broken marriage. I did it for Sammy, so she wouldn't have to endure our divorce while she was still young. I thought that over time, because I loved you so much, we might move past this. I was wrong. Instead of ending it then, I forced it to work. But you were right about one thing. You did end something. From the moment you said his name that night, our marriage was over. I left the house, got into my car, and drove off. I spent hours just driving. The roar of my Mustang and the rush of speeding down dark, moonlit roads dulled some of the pain. I turned off my phone to avoid any interruptions. Oddly, I wasn't as devastated as I might have expected. I had known about her behavior for over 5 years and had been preparing for this moment ever since. In many ways, the most shocking part for Erica was realizing that I had known about her deception all this time and that she was only now discovering why it had ended. 5 years ago, she had flown to Boston for a conference, the same one she attended every year. She booked a room at her usual hotel. The conference was only a one-day workshop, though she always told me it lasted 2 days. After the event, she had dinner with Randall. They stayed at the restaurant talking until it closed, and she even mentioned me a couple of times. After the restaurant closed, they shared a light kiss, and she returned to her room. Randall walked to the parking lot to get to his car, where I was sitting on the hood. Hey, this is my car, he said. Sorry, I responded. It's wrong to touch things that don't belong to you, isn't it, Randy? I couldn't agree more, he said. Is that one of my hubcaps? Yes, I said with a smile. I took it myself. But let's not talk about hubcaps, Randy. Let's talk about Mary, your wife, who's waiting for you at home on Sycamore Street. It's probably too late for me to visit her now. Maybe I'll see her tomorrow. I'm calling the police, Randall said, pulling out his phone. I pulled out mine and held it out to him. Go ahead, Randy. It'll be my word against yours, and you'll lose because somehow it'll come out that you were spending time with my wife, Erica.
While your faithful wife waited for you at home, Randy's face went pale. I'm not that kind of guy, he stammered. I think you're mistaken, he insisted. I do know Erica, but we haven't been spending time together. He looked into my eyes and saw that I was serious. Okay, we had dinner tonight, he admitted. We were discussing interesting points from the conference and just lost track of time. But that's all, nothing else happened. Phew, I said, pretending to be relieved. He gave a small smile, reassured that I seemed to believe him. Then I punched him as hard as I could. He went down like a bowling pin. He tried to get up and run, so I threw his own hubcap at his feet. He tripped over it and fell again. By the time I was done, both of Randy's eyes were swollen shut. His nose was broken and his lip was split. "You really scared me, Randy," I said. "For a moment, I thought I couldn't go through with it. I know you only had dinner tonight, but what about last year? Or the year before? How long has this been going on?" "Maybe 15 or 20 years, he muttered, his words barely audible through swollen lips. "It's over now, Randy," I said. He nodded quickly. "If you ever mention her name again, I will ruin your marriage and your life. Do we understand each other?" He nodded again. "Don't visit her," I continued. "No texts, no calls. There won't be any more warnings." "I understand," he croaked. "Randy, next time we speak, it won't be so civil," I added. Seemed to have worked. When I got home, Erica was acting the same as usual after the conference. She tried to make it up to me with sex, but I didn't give in. Normally we would go on vacation together after the conference, but this year I pretended to be too busy. Despite my efforts, I couldn't shake off what had happened. My thoughts were consumed by anger. Now, for those of you who don't know, there's a heavy metal band called Judas Priest. Their best album is Screaming for Vengeance, and that's exactly how I felt. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't calm down. I wanted blood. I wanted someone to pay for the pain I'd suffered. If misery loves company, then I sure as hell wanted someone else to feel it too, and that someone was Randy. Through some business connections, I orchestrated his firing. I didn't make it obvious, didn't let him know it was me, but it felt good knowing it was done. I didn't regret it. It gave me the same twisted satisfaction as doing something good for Erica while silently destroying Randy. I had spent the last 5 years of my life doing just that. At the same time, I knew a divorce from Erica was inevitable. Why didn't I just confront her and file for divorce? Despite everything, I still loved her. Deep down, I wanted to believe her and give her another chance. But my mind, much like at work, told me to prepare for anything. I told Erica there was a pay at work. I pretended to be frozen in my career when, in reality, I had received a promotion. A few months later, I got another promotion, the one I had been working toward for over a decade. I didn't tell Erica that my salary had almost doubled. Instead, I moved most of the extra income into accounts she didn't know existed. 2 years later, another promotion and another raise came, and once again I kept it a secret. The reason for all this secrecy was simple. If we divorced, she wouldn't have the slightest idea of my real income. She would still think I was making $40,000 a year, and the divorce settlement would be based on that figure. And yes, I know that legal experts would argue there's no way I could get away with this without consequences. A good lawyer would request my tax returns and speak to HR about my salary. But my boss, who had been devastated by his own divorce, was more than willing to help me out. In the company's records, I was officially listed as a middle manager. No one questioned it because all the other managers reported to me, and I reported directly to the executives. 3/4 of my actual salary was funneled into a company that appeared to be one of our suppliers. I didn't own the company, nor was I a director. On paper, the directors were my fishing buddies. In exchange for using their names, I simply took them on fishing trips a few times a year. They were listed as volunteers, so there were no tax implications for them, and the money flowed straight into my offshore account, completely untraceable. Despite my hidden financial setup, I did make withdrawals when necessary. After Sammy and Darren got married, I made a large down payment on their house to help them start their life with less financial strain. I didn't buy the house outright, but I contributed enough to keep their mortgage under $100 a month. Later, I bought them a second car since they worked in different parts of town, making life easier for them. Even when giving gifts to my kids, I had to be cautious. The money for their house was supposedly from my pension fund, so if Erica ever looked into it, she would think I had almost no retirement savings to claim. The money for the car came from a loan, further reducing my disposable income, ensuring that Erica would get even less in the event of a divorce. One of the most satisfying parts of my situation was that Randall worked in production, specializing in casting inspection. My company was a manufacturing business with plants all over the country. Knowing this, I reached out to a private detective friend in Boston and asked him to keep an eye on. Every time Randy got a job, I would inform one of our account managers if we had dealings with his employer. If we did, one of my friends would arrange a casual lunch with someone at the company, and soon after Randy would be fired. If we didn't have an account with the company, we would open one, and he'd still be fired anyway. I kept a spreadsheet on my computer dedicated to tracking Randy and all of his professional downfalls. Over time, I didn't even need to interfere. His reputation in the manufacturing industry became so tarnished that he couldn't even secure an interview. Before he died, his last jobs were in landscaping or as a day laborer, far removed from his former career. His financial struggles put immense strain on his marriage, forcing his wife to return to work to help support their family. I never interfered with her career. I had no issues with her. In fact, I made sure that Randy's children got the opportunities they deserved. I personally ensured his daughter got into law school by creating a scholarship just for her, awarding it to her anonymously. The scholarship ended the year she graduated, and she never knew who funded it. Her grades were excellent, and throughout her studies, she received multiple financial bonuses from an unknown benefactor, me. Meanwhile, Randy's inability to provide for his family crushed his pride. He was a proud man who had always wanted to be self-sufficient, to take care of his loved ones. Realizing he couldn't was a major blow. He turned to drinking, and over time it consumed him. Yet, despite his struggles, he never became violent or aggressive toward his wife or daughter. By the end of his life, however, he was merely a shadow of the man he once was.
As I reflected on everything, I realized how much my own actions had changed me. I was no longer the person I had been before discovering my wife's infidelity. Once, I had been calm, friendly, open, and honest. But learning that the woman I loved had repeatedly betrayed me shook me to my core. When I looked in the mirror, I didn't see a heartless person who had systematically dismantled another man's life over a single mistake. I still saw myself, John Forrest, the kind family man. But then again, shouldn't villains have telltale signs? In the past, they all wore black hats. Maybe I should trade my Mustang for a black one. Yet, even as I considered these thoughts, I kept moving forward. I couldn't stop. My broken heart craved revenge more than it longed for healing. My soul demanded retribution far more than it desired peace, more than it desired forgiveness. As I watched Randy's life crumble, I kept an eye on Erica too, realizing I could never trust her again. Losing faith in the woman I had promised to love and cherish forever was a terrible feeling, but her relationship with Randy had destroyed not just our marriage, it had shattered my ability to fully trust anyone. For 5 years, while I was silently dismantling Randy's life, I was also preparing for our divorce. Unlike most men who only have days or weeks to protect their assets, I had 5 years to get ready. Initially, I had planned to wait longer. Despite everything, Erica was still attractive, though that was beginning to fade. My plan was to wait until she declined completely before ending things, but Randy didn't last as long as I had anticipated. Over those years, I saved and hid as much money as possible, ensuring that when the time came, I wouldn't lose everything. The house wasn't a concern. It had been in my parents' family for generations, and since my parents were still alive and didn't need such a large home, they allowed us to live there rent-free. When Erica returned from her conference, she sent Randy a message about how much she had enjoyed their dinner and how wonderful it was to kiss him. She mentioned missing the intimacy they had shared in the past, but was relieved they hadn't crossed that line this time. She told him she felt guilty for cheating on me, just as he likely felt guilty about betraying his wife. She rationalized that their current relationship, romantic but without physical intimacy, was better because they could enjoy it forever, without guilt. Maybe they were getting older and didn't need physical affection. Just being together was enough. Until next year, my love, she signed off. I read that message while waiting for my luggage at the airport, and the urge to strangle her was overwhelming. Though I still felt something for her, my love had been tainted, twisted into something darker. Keeping my emotions in check became more difficult. When Erica got home, I was sitting in the living room watching a football game. She came over to hug and kiss me, but I pulled back, claiming I had a cold. "Just make sure we're both okay by this weekend," she said with a smile.
Why?
What's happening this weekend? I asked. Our vacation, remember? We always go after my boring conference, she reminded me. Maybe you could take a mother-daughter trip this year, I suggested. I really can't take time off work. But it's just the weekend, she argued. You'd only need to miss 2 days. Think about it, 4 nights, 3 days in Hawaii, just us. We might not even leave the hotel room. I bought lots of things you'll like. I wondered how many of those things Randy would have seen if they had met sooner. Erica, there's a wage freeze at work, and they're looking for any way to cut costs. I need to make sure they don't see me as an unnecessary expense, I said. I understand, she replied. I'll call our son after Mom's old friend? Sammy asked, clearly taken aback. Erica had gone upstairs earlier to call Sammy, and at the same time, she had sent Randall another message, asking if he had received her previous one. The thought disgusted me. When I didn't go upstairs, she came looking for me, but I pretended to be asleep on the couch. Over the next few weeks, I composed myself, perfecting my performance, becoming an even better actor than I had ever imagined. We continued having regular intimacy, though I didn't care if Erica enjoyed it. I certainly didn't. I no longer needed to focus on her, because I no longer cared. Instead of seeing Erica as the woman I loved, I started viewing her as someone I simply shared physical relations with, convenient, available, nothing more. Our interactions grew rougher, less tender, but more daring. Erica had always been reserved in intimacy, but in the guilt-ridden aftermath of her conference, she rarely turned me down. As the next conference approached, I watched her closely. I checked her phone account online, ensuring there were no calls from Boston, but I discovered she had sent several messages to Randall. She grew visibly upset when he didn't respond, even reaching out to mutual friends who told her he acted as though he didn't remember her. But I knew the truth. He did remember, and he was afraid. He knew that if he responded, I would either harm him or, worse, tell his wife and destroy his life.
So, you understand it's over, Erica said with a smile. How do I know? Yes. 5 years ago, you told him your love would last until one of you died. Well, that was only 5 years ago, and now he's gone. But maybe you meant it. You loved him enough to try to have Sammy name my grandson after him, even if it cost our marriage. No, John, you don't understand, she said. You chose to hurt me instead. Hurt you? Questioned. This went on for over 20 years. In that time, you and I were probably together over 2,000 times. And I cherished every moment. With Randall there were at most 8 encounters, and they were all terrible. If I had put Randall above you, I'd understand the pain, but I didn't. I loved you too much for that. It was a once-a-year thing, far from home, where no one would know us. No shame for you. Even the year you confronted Randy and ended it, we had already agreed at dinner that it was better not to continue being physical, just to enjoy each other's company. This would have ended on its own. I wasn't going to meet him again that way. When I said it was better without guilt, that's what I meant. I was going to gently let him go. Next year I wouldn't have met him at all. I would have changed my number and it would have been over. No one would ever know. Just like when you go to car shows and models pose with your Mustang, it's just a nice memory in our old age. You attacked an innocent man for no reason, John. He wasn't a threat to us, only to your pride. I wanted to name our grandson after Randall, not because I was in love with him, but to honor a special friend. A tear rolled down Erica's cheek. Clapped slowly. Great performance, Erica, I said. You must have practiced this while we were apart. Sammy, name the boy Randall James if you like. Randall James Dillon would make your mother happy. Sammy looked at me, shocked. Dad, we're naming Darren. We're naming him Marshall after Darren's grandfather, Marshall Dillon, Sammy said firmly. That's his name. I won't name my son after that man, no matter what Mom thinks. Erica sighed. Well, at least now you understand, she said. I wish you did, Erica, I replied. It hurt because I loved you more than anyone. I loved you too much to share you with someone else. It hurt because, despite what you claim, when a married woman sleeps with another man, she's rejecting her marriage. Some say one mistake isn't enough to break up a marriage, but I disagree. And this wasn't just once. You had an ongoing affair for years. You lied, misled me, and broke our vows. Even now, I can't fully trust you. I still follow you to ensure you do what you say. You've damaged our marriage in ways that haven't fully surfaced. I took a deep breath and looked at her. Erica, how long have I had the Mustang I drive now, and what's special about it? She hesitated. It has more horsepower, she guessed. Anything else? Pressed. She looked confused. You've never been in it, I said sharply. I've had that car for nearly 4 years, and you've never sat in it. When we go out, we use your car or the SUV. I don't trust you, and I don't want you in my car, just like I don't want you in my heart. Erica began to cry. What can I do to fix this? It's been 5 years since it ended. Isn't that enough, John? She pleaded. Let's be fair, I said. What if I start seeing someone periodically for the next 20 or 30 years? John, I wouldn't like that. 2 wrongs don't make a right, she snapped. I didn't think you would, Erica, I said, placing a card on the table. There's my lawyer's contact information. Pass it to your next boyfriend. Try to find someone soon so this doesn't drag out longer than necessary. John, I don't want a divorce, she cried. It's been 5 years. Turn to Sammy. Get her out of here before I do something I'll regret. Sammy took her mother's hand and led her out. In the days that followed, Erica made every effort to talk to me, often with Sammy and Darren acting as mediators since I no longer wanted to speak with her. I stayed firm, reminding her that she had already had her chance to talk. What neither of us realized, however, was that her staying with Sammy and Darren was affecting their relationship. Erica cried often, leaning heavily on Sammy, who supported her, but after weeks, this influence started to show. Sammy even brought it up during a dinner with Darren. Darren and I sat down with Sammy to reassure her that even though Erica and I were separating, my relationship with them wouldn't change. I'd still visit, and we'd spend time together without having to choose sides or worry about upsetting anyone. Dad, is there really no way you and Mom can work things out? Sammy asked hesitantly. Decide. I don't think so. Why, Dad? Mom loves you. She didn't do it often, and it wasn't with people you knew. You even confronted that guy. On average, it was less than once a year. Can't you just— That's enough, Sammy, Darren interrupted sharply. Usually quiet, this time he was decisive. What if it was me? What if I cheated with my secretary occasionally? Not daily, maybe once a month or less. Would it hurt any less if you found out when we were 50? Would it make it okay? Sammy looked at him seriously. You don't do that, do you? She asked. She's younger and attractive, Darren said. I was attractive until I had your kids, Sammy retorted. So because I'm not as slim, you cheat with Tammy? Sammy, one day she won't be beautiful either, and I'll be faithful again, Darren said. Sammy's eyes filled with tears. Sammy, I'm sorry. I love you and have never cheated on you. You're still the most beautiful woman to me, but I needed you to understand how your dad feels, he said softly. It's worse for him because it lasted so long.
I'm sorry, Dad, Sammy said, guilt evident in her voice. I listened to Mom too much. She convinced me it wasn't that bad, and I just wanted to comfort her. Your dad even gave her a second chance when he ended the affair, Darren added. He didn't punish her or make her feel guilty, but she couldn't let go of her feelings. Can you imagine naming your grandson after the man your wife cheated with? Your mom either doesn't respect your dad or thinks he's naive, suggesting that name was insulting. I think your dad is justified. Erica fought the divorce fiercely, trying to outmaneuver everyone. One day, she called me at work, saying she'd found a lawyer and would bring his contact information when she stopped by before her date that evening. Erica, you don't have to do this, I said. Why interrupt your evening? Just give your lawyer my contact info. I don't have it with me, she said. I just remembered to call. I'm at the salon getting ready. I'll do it when I get home. Should I tell my lawyer you'll call in about 10 minutes? I asked. Why? She asked, hesitating. You said you're at the salon. You've always been beautiful, Erica. They can't improve what's already perfect, I said gently. There was silence on the other end before she abruptly replied, "I have to go," her voice cracking, probably in tears. Minutes later, my phone rang again. "Dad, why do you always make her cry? Isn't divorce enough?" Sammy asked, frustration in her voice. "Sammy, what are you talking about?" I asked, confused. Mom called, then started crying. I checked and saw the call was from you. I explained the conversation to Sammy, who sighed. "Dad, she wasn't at the salon or on a date. I think she was just trying to make you jealous." There was a pause before she asked, "Do you really think Mom is beautiful?" "I always thought so, Sammy," I said softly. "Her looks and personality were what I loved most about your mom. You might not see it, but she's truly beautiful. Charming and deeply in love. I had cherished Erica, which was why I resented Randy so much. He had threatened the person who gave my life meaning." "Then why not give her another chance, Dad?" Sammy asked. I sighed. "I did, honey, and it was the hardest 5 years of my life. Every time she left the house, I doubted where she was going and who she might be seeing. If she could have an affair across the country, why not nearby without my knowing? I love her, but I can't trust her. Remember when Darren joked about sleeping with his secretary? Did you stop thinking about it even after he said it wasn't true? Well, I don't have to wonder. Your mom actually cheated, and it wasn't a one-time thing. It went on for years until I stopped it. Without me intervening, she would have kept it going." Erica's lawyer pushed for counseling, and mine insisted I attend at least the first 2 weeks. I spent those sessions reading magazines, disengaged. When the counselor asked why, I told him it was pointless. The court could make me attend, but it couldn't change my feelings. No amount of discussion could force me to stay married. The divorce took 8 months, 3 times longer than expected. Erica's lawyer scrutinized my work records, suspicious of how prepared they were, as if I had anticipated this. He found everything needed but missed the deeper details. The judge classified the house as an asset, adding a calculated value to Erica's share since I hadn't paid rent. I also had to pay $400 in alimony for 3 years. I chose to give her a check from a loan, opting for monthly payments to the bank rather than dealing with her. After the divorce, I took my first vacation, a cruise, where I kept to myself, hiding in my cabin, avoiding attention. It was too soon for socializing. My second trip was to a ranch out west, but it was filled with too many men, and it wasn't the experience I had hoped for. The final trip was the 66 cruise, a road trip along Route 66 from Chicago to Los Angeles, filled with car events and parties. I used this time to bond with my Mustang, thinking of it as my companion, and reflecting on what I wanted for the next 20 or 30 years without Erica. Even though I knew my life would be better without her, my heart still ached. But I realized I wasn't just a lost, lonely divorced man. I was part of a community. Thousands of people shared my passion for cars, and when we came together, it was something special. Each of us believed our car was the ultimate work of automotive art. At the start of the event, I stayed on the sidelines during announcements, but I was never truly alone unless I wanted to be. "Hey buddy, your Mustang is gorgeous," an older man said. I had one before I switched to Corvettes. "How much horsepower does it have?" At every stop and meal, people approached me to chat about cars, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of belonging. During the cruise, I met people who shared my interests, and some even debated whether foreign cars belonged on Route 66. I'd tell them, "Cars are cars. There's room for everyone." Most agreed, and an older man jokingly suggested that car lovers should unite against motorcyclists. I steered clear of that conversation. I also met some passionate women, like one who had divorced her husband after he falsely claimed her classic '69 Camaro, as is when friends caught her working on it. Embarrassed, he told her to choose between him and the car. She chose the car. I connected with several women who I thought would make great friends, but I wasn't ready to replace Erica. Still, the trip made me realize that life could go on and that I might find a partner again someday. When I returned home, I felt different, more content, more at peace, and more in love with my Mustang than ever.
Then I saw Erica at a mutual friend's wedding, and the sight of her shocked me. She looked thin, almost gaunt, with a severe hairstyle and tired eyes. Go say something nice to her, Dad, Sammy nudged. I sighed but walked over. Hi, Erica. You've lost weight. Is this a new hairstyle? She spun around, her eyes lighting up. Do you like it? She asked eagerly. I didn't want to become inactive and out of shape. I gave her a small smile. You've always been beautiful to me, I said. Focus on what makes you feel good. Your long hair always framed your face and brought out your best features, like your eyes and dimples. Her smile returned and I added, and you don't need to diet. Forget fashion trends. Whoever's next will agree that women with curves are better. Go have a burger. As I walked away, Erica looked stunned, watching me for the rest of the night. I subtly kept my distance. The next day, Sammy called. Dad, you were great at the wedding. Mom seemed happier than she has in a while. She even ate a full meal. She hesitated. She said, Dad will probably like me better if I have curves again. What did you tell her? I just said she's beautiful and shouldn't worry about dieting, I replied. She's 50 like me, she doesn't need to be thin. Whatever, Dad, Sammy said, then quickly changed the subject. I need your help. I tensed, but she laughed. Relax, it's not about Mom. I have a friend who needs help passing algebra and trigonometry. You were great at tutoring me in school. Don't they have tutors? Yes. Dad, she works nights and can't make most sessions. She's unique. Can you try for me? Besides, you don't have much else going on. Curious, I agreed to meet my daughter's friend. When I arrived, I noticed her red hair first, and at first glance, I thought she looked heavy. Sammy had mentioned she had a medical condition and struggled with self-esteem. She was quiet, reserved, and seemed unsure of herself. It was a warm day when we met, and as I got to know her, I began to see beyond first impressions. At a Starbucks downtown, she brought her book, and I began explaining the parts she didn't understand from the current chapter. However, I quickly realized she was struggling with earlier concepts as well, so I suggested we go back a few chapters to build a stronger foundation before catching up with the class. She agreed, and we scheduled multiple study sessions throughout the week. Over time, she started to really like me, and I began to wonder how her condition, whatever it was, affected her. At our next meeting, still at Starbucks, we worked for about 3 hours before she became frustrated. This pattern continued for weeks, and as we grew more comfortable with each other, I often found myself losing track of conversations, distracted by her eyes. Finally, before a Thursday afternoon session, I asked if she'd like to study at my house instead. The weather was warming up, and I suggested doing 2 sessions on a Saturday afternoon before she had to leave for work, making it more convenient. She smiled and said, I'd really like to study at your house, then hesitated. Not sure about the coat though. I wear it for my safety and yours. I assured her. Shell, I'd never make you feel uncomfortable. You know this by now. You can't control how you were born. Physical conditions are nothing to be ashamed of. She laughed. Who told you I'm deformed? She asked. Sammy said so, I replied. Mr. Forrest, Sammy was joking, she said. I'm not actually deformed. Unless you look at it that way. I guess I'm just heavy. Then there's no problem, I said. Oh, but there is a problem, she said, suddenly serious. Do you have a computer? She asked. Puzzled, I nodded. Google Mel Malloy, she instructed. Watch the video, I have the same issue. I'll call you tomorrow to plan for Saturday. As she walked away, she briefly touched my arm, and I realized I had a dilemma. This woman couldn't be older than 30. To me, she was just a kid. When I got home, I found 10 messages on my voicemail, all from Erica. We had been divorced for almost a year, and I couldn't figure out why she suddenly wanted to talk. As the phone rang again, I expected it to be her, but it was Sammy. Dad, everything is messed up, and it's my fault. What are you going to do? She asked. Wait, honey, I said, confused. What do you mean? Mom, she clarified. Remember when I made you say nice things to her at the wedding? Well, she lost it. She started eating again and did her hair the way she thought you liked it. She thinks she can win you back, and it's my fault. Dad, I don't know what happened between you two, but I think you like Shelley. I know she's young for you and has some issues, but she's really a good person. Just be kind if you need to let her down. You don't want to know what she deals with at work. I didn't want to make a mistake with Erica. I was glad she was coming out of her depression, but I couldn't see myself with her again. Too much had happened. On the other hand, Shell fascinated me. What could possibly make her interested in me? She was beautiful, and when we studied, I often found myself staring at her as she worked through problems. Her smile was captivating, her lips full, and I wondered what it would be like to kiss them or gently graze them. My life felt like a cycle of highs and lows. For nearly a year, I hadn't met or spoken to any women beyond those I encountered while traveling along Route 66. Now, 2 women were interested in me. One I didn't want and one I couldn't have.
While I mulled over my situation, I turned on my computer and searched for the name Shell had mentioned. The results were overwhelming, filled with unfamiliar terms. What on earth was a POG? I clicked on a video, which turned out to be a vlog of a woman trying to lose weight. She was quite attractive and somewhat resembled Shell, but it wasn't her. The hair and facial features were different. Was Shell trying to tell me she wanted to lose weight? That wouldn't matter to me at all. As I watched earlier videos, I was stunned. The only person who seemed to think this woman was heavy was herself. She had an incredibly curvy figure, full curves, a tiny waist, and striking proportions that no man would consider overweight. As her videos progressed, she spoke less about dieting and more about her interactions with viewers. The larger her audience grew, the less she wore, and the more attention she received. I was taken aback. Without thinking, I picked up my phone just as it started ringing. "John, would you like to come over for dinner to see your daughter, son-in-law, and grandkids? I'm making a roast, just how you like it, with carrots and potatoes," Erica said. I hesitated. I had always told everyone that I wanted things to be easy and comfortable so the kids wouldn't feel awkward about inviting both of us. So I said yes. I arrived expecting a relaxed family dinner. Darren was in jeans and a t-shirt, and we chatted for a bit. Then Erica came downstairs in a new dress that showed off her legs. She had gained some weight since the wedding, but she looked healthier. Her hair was down and flowing, a stark contrast to the stiff, overdone look she had at the wedding. She smiled at me and sat next to me. "The roast will be ready in 20 minutes, she said. "Sammy is upstairs trying to get the kids ready for bed," Erica said, taking my hand and looking at me. At that moment, Darren excused himself to check on the wine for dinner. "Will we have wine?" I asked, setting the tone for the evening. I found myself alone with Erica often throughout the night, and she kept smiling at me. The food was delicious, and I realized how much I had taken it for granted. When you're used to someone cooking for you, and then it suddenly stops, you learn to appreciate it even more. I thought about the last time we had a roast dinner together, remembering Sammy's disastrous dry fries and how Erica had brought up naming our grandson after Randy, which had ultimately led to our divorce. After dinner, Sammy and Darren cleared the table, leaving Erica and me alone again. She suggested we go for a walk or sit on the porch. "If we were at home, we'd be out on our veranda," she mused. "It feels like another life, but it's only been a year." "It really does feel like a long time ago," I agreed. "John, have you been with anyone since our divorce?" she asked. "Of course," I replied casually. "Plenty of times." Her face fell, disappointment clear in her expression. "Oh, I guess I deserve that." "What do you mean?" I asked. "I haven't been with anyone since us." "I didn't even try," she admitted. "So, are you just having fun, or?" "No," I interrupted with a smile. "I'm seeing someone." She looked down, and for a moment, I thought she might cry. "Who is she?" "It's not a woman," I said with a chuckle. Her head snapped up in shock. "Who are you with then?" "I'm with you, Erica," I laughed. She stared at me, confused. "What do you mean? What did you expect?" I said. "We were married for so long, and I loved you deeply. It takes time to move on, to find someone new, to create memories that could replace the ones we made." "Why would you want to replace them?" she asked softly. "It was a good time for you, Erica, but it was hard for me," I said honestly. I loved you more than anything, but I knew you were unfaithful. I knew you betrayed me repeatedly. You knew I was committed to you, but I had to share you. And in those moments, he was more important to you. It wasn't like that, John. Never, she said, her voice pleading. You don't see it, do you? There was never anyone else for me. I loved you as much as you loved me. I still do. I only slept with Randy a few times.
He's gone, John.
There's no reason to bring him up.
You're right,
I said. But why did you mention it then? I didn't, she replied. I just asked if you'd been with someone, and now we're arguing, like usual. I wanted to ask you something, but it went off track. Maybe we should change the topic, I suggested. Or maybe we shouldn't talk at all, she said. Let's just appreciate the evening with our family and leave it at that. Tonight wasn't so bad. We made it through dinner without a big argument. That's a step in the right direction. I nodded, but her tight expression told me she wasn't convinced. She was fighting back tears. It's a beautiful night, I said, shifting the conversation. You know what would make it better? She asked quietly. A cold beer. I joked. I was thinking we could go back to your place and be together, she said. I choked slightly, taking a deep breath. Erica, neither of the boys would be happy about that, and neither would their grandmother. Why wouldn't I approve? She asked, raising an eyebrow. I'd love it. After months of you dating and living here with that grandma blow-up doll, you better be ready for more than a kiss when we leave here. I didn't mean you, I said, confused by her reaction. You mentioned their grandmother, she said sharply. Don't tell me you're thinking of moving in with Darren's mom. Her husband only passed 2 months ago, and you never liked her much. No, I was talking about Grandma as you called her. When Shell and I get married, she'll be their grandma too. Shelley and Erica both looked stunned. But Dad, Shelley is barely older than me. She can't be my stepmother. Sammy exclaimed. The main reason I introduced you two was because you both needed someone to help ease the pain. It was never supposed to be permanent. Well, you did a great job because I love Shell. She loves me and we're committed, I said firmly. We're also going to be parents. So, Sammy, you're going to have a new sibling, and the boys will have a new aunt or uncle. As for you, Erica, I'm not sure what that makes you. Maybe their ex-grandmother or step-grandmother. We'll figure it out as we go. Erica's face twisted in disbelief. Is this part of your revenge? She asked. Is that what this is about? You fought Randy, but never retaliated against me. Now you got this girl pregnant just to hurt me? You wanted me to feel the pain you think I caused you. She sat up in bed, her voice rising. Do you even realize how serious this is? You could be tied to her for the rest of your life, at least until the child grows up. Did you really need your revenge that badly? Erica, stop thinking only of yourself, I said firmly. When I found out about you and Randy, yes, I beat him up. But that wasn't all. I handled the rest quietly. At the time, I thought I was seeking revenge, but it left me feeling empty. When he died, I wondered if it was because I targeted the wrong person. Randy didn't betray me, you did. Randy didn't promise to be faithful to me. I couldn't hit you or do anything to you, Erica, but I also couldn't stay married to someone I didn't trust. Our divorce wasn't an act of revenge. I just couldn't live with that kind of betrayal. It took me a long time to realize that what I was expressing wasn't anger or a need for revenge. It was longing for love. And I found that with Shell. I took a deep breath. I'm glad you're doing better, Erica.
But if this was some kind of scheme to get me to the hospital so we could reconcile, it was pointless. That said, you're both welcome at the wedding. With that, I left the hospital, feeling much better than when I had arrived. As the door closed behind me, I heard them arguing over who would pay the hospital bill. It didn't matter. But one thing was certain. I knew it wouldn't be me.